Hello, everybody. Hello, Anna.
Hi, Tony.
Hello.
Grand dawning, everyone.
Tony, Tony.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good evening from South.
G'day. Good dawning from Terra Australis.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Just, Anna, can you hear us?
Beat the sparrows out of bed this morning, Mookie.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, she's 5 a.m. here. So it's good. Luckily, I'm a dawning man.
Yeah, with you.
Okay, good. I think the morning festivities are done.
Hey, there she is. How are you?
Oh, well, as you know, Tony, I've been up early and working hard.
Yeah. I'm getting a rap on the knuckles a couple of times for ringing Anna about 5:30 in the morning. Um, any news since we last spoke?
Well, I think that we have basically figured out how to not only regain complete liquidity for the land jurisdiction, but to essentially exercise our share ownership in all of these banks and lawfully convert them. You see, there was a process that had to be undertaken to convert all of these banks. Just one second, this is a call I have
No
to.
problem. Go ahead. Yeah, while she's on the phone, you may already know this, most of you, but speaking to Anna on whatever day it was, Tuesday, she said today was a very important response she's expecting back from the World Bank. So I believe this is what she's talking about, but we'll give her another moment now to elaborate. Everything all right?
Yeah, everything's fine. Just a, one of those little short, brief, important calls that
No
come
problem.
in all throughout the course of the day and night. But anyway, we have figured out how to get past the unlawful conversion that took place in the 1920s and get back to a lawful conversion, which will restore the land jurisdiction and basically, I guess you could say, reset the banks so that we're operating properly. And the commercial banks will be operating with on prepaid credit, essentially, and the international trade banks will be operating on things like precious metals and oil and that sort of thing, commodity-based, asset-backed based currencies. Though, for example, the currency of Nigeria might be oil, might be backed by oil instead of gold. There really isn't any set rule in asset-backed currencies what the asset is. It simply has to have a reliable market value. And you can use it to establish an asset-backed currency. So, given the circumstances that many different countries face and their ability to produce different commodities, we may see currencies backed with coffee. But, you know, whatever it is, it'll be asset-backed in international trade. And it's
Wow.
looking good. It's looking really good in terms of being able to recoup enough gold and silver to, you know, one way or another, make that an entire cohesive system where everybody ultimately has gold and silver and can trade in gold and silver for asset-backed international trade purposes. What else am I seeing? I'm seeing a great kind of pushback against central banks as a concept. Because the central banks, they basically sold themselves back in the 20s. They had engineered a bank run, a couple of bank runs that were quite substantial in the 1910s, 1920s. And they finally convinced the members of the Congress to allow a central bank to take over and manipulate commodity reserves. And that's what Federal Reserve is all about, is to rig commodities, and not just money, but all commodities. They've been rigging everything from sow bellies to rice crops ever since the 1920s. And they said that this would stabilize the market and it would create a more stable banking environment. We wouldn't have bank runs. We wouldn't have, you know, commodity shortages or commodity overages, and they would be able to control all of this for the benefit of mankind. And so basically they were licensed to do something that is intrinsically illegal. They were licensed to rig commodities, and that's what we've been living under ever since the 1920s, is a commodity rigging system that benefited some and impoverished others, and which in any case did not work. It did not serve to stabilize banking. It did not serve to assist us or to avoid those evils that we've seen, for example, with the 2007 stock market manipulation known as the Big Short. None of that, the central banks didn't help in any of the ways that they promised they would. And instead, they set up this gigantic price fixing and supply fixing conglomerate that has had its fingers in everything, and which has artificially run the world for 100 years. And we've paid them for it. We've paid them for this service very well. So we've had not only did the service not work, not only did they not produce what they promised to produce, they've charged us heavily for it, and they've created a criminal empire of rare renown. So there's a lot of pushback against the entire concept of central banking because it obstructs international trade and it rigs commodities by doing so. And both of those things are known to everyone to be illegal.
So this is very significant what you've just introduced, Anna, to us. Is this related to any response yet from the World Banks today?
No, banking is about banking. This is a
Okay.
world court issue where
Okay.
not only did they fail in their assigned task, but they also it has resulted in vast criminality. It's illegal to securitize and monetize the value of living flesh. And yet, by redefining us as corporate franchises, they were able to do precisely that. And anytime you have a system that securitizes or performance bonds living flesh, you have peonage, and slavery, which were both outlawed worldwide in 1926. So, these are the facts that I've brought forward to the World Court and which they cannot afford to ignore, because each and every one of us has been shanghaied. We've all been kidnapped as babies into a foreign jurisdiction of the law, and we have been considered to be corporate franchises, things, not people. And there's no law against murdering, raping, pillaging, blah, 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 a thing. You can do what you will with a corporation. You can't do it with a living man. And yet, by redefining us as things, they were able to, enforce this phony foreign law system, and they were able to do things to living people that are illegal and unlawful and immoral. For example, the draft. Press ganging and military conscription have both been outlawed for approximately 200 years. And yet, as we all know, there have been draft things, there have been activities, forced conscription on the land and press ganging on the sea that has gone on continuously for the past 300 years. Here in America, it is well within living memory that we had a draft during the Vietnam conflict. And many young men were forced into the military service, whether they wanted to go or not. And this is illegal as hell and has been for centuries. Okay, so this is some sort of new paganism rising and a twisted criminal system of quote unquote law that isn't law. And, we have blown the lid off it. We've discovered the roots of it. We've discovered the mechanisms of it. We know the entire history of it, and we know who the guilty parties are. And unfortunately, for the people living in the British Isles, it's the British government that has 90% been the muscle and the mayhem behind it. But it is also acting in collusion with the Dutch government. And it has always been in collusion with the Dutch government since the very early 1700s, when we had what I keep telling everybody about, the Bottomry bonds scandal and the collapse and disappearance of the Dutch East India Trading Company. Now, the Dutch East India Trading Company was chartered by the Dutch government, much like the British East India Company was chartered by the British government. And for many years, these two behemoths of the oceans were in competition with each other. But then something happened. In the early 1700s, we had the Treaty of Utrecht. And this then allowed the pernicious evil of private insurance to arise in the Admiralty. And so suddenly they could privately insure cargoes and ships that were in transit from point A to point B on the ocean. And there was a vast piling on of, merchants and ship owners insuring their ships and their cargo. And the Bottomry bonds were bonds issued against the value of the cargo that the ships were carrying. And the idea was that if the bottom of the ship was intact, then the cargo was intact. And they called them Bottomry bonds, because the object here was to keep from getting a hole in your hull. Okay, so these are Bottomry bonds. And they issued all these Bottomry bonds that were insuring all these ships and all these cargoes that were being transported by the Dutch East India Company, which was at that time by far the largest shipping company in the world. They carried more tonnage than any other by far, including the British East India Company. But suddenly, all of a sudden they had these bottomry bonds become available. Everybody piled on, everybody bought insurance for their ships and their cargo. And then amazingly, the Dutch East India Company disappeared. And what had happened is they had insured phantom vessels. They had insured vessels by name only, that existed in name only. They had insured cargo that existed in name only. Okay, just like they substitute corporate franchises for us. Well, they just made up these ships out of thin air, insured them, and insured their cargo to boot, while the actual ships sailed over the horizon and disappeared. The entire Dutch East India Company disappeared. Well, where did all those Dutch ships and all the cargo that they were carrying go? The answer is half of it went to New York, and half of it went to the other side of the world. I think the other half that was able to make the journey went around the Horn and landed in the Pacific. So anyway, there was a collaboration between the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company that allowed the British to basically be the storefront for the Dutch East India Company that folded. So now you've got the hidden hand situation again, where the actual power brokers were the Dutch, but the British were out there acting as the storefront for the Dutch company. And that's this relationship that started out with defrauding these insurance companies and ship owners and everybody else in such an outrageous manner and laying it on the public. These were public bonds, right? So the public was stuck paying for the losses. It was a great scandal at the time. This was a relationship that got started as a result of this criminal collusion over the bottomry bonds. And the Dutch, well, Anglo-Dutch or Dutch-Anglo, however you want to put it, that alliance has continued on until the very day. And so the Dutch are heavily involved in this too. And the Roman Empire comes in as a third party. And the Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire, has been able to manipulate the British side of it to a large extent, and also holds a controlling interest in the Dutch side of it, so that the Pope at the end of the day owns both sides. He has controlling interest in both sides. And so they specialize in setting up different kinds of wars. They make their money off of war and off of transport, out of shipping. Shipping and war have been their major cash cows. They've made money on other things, most recently on oil, crude oil especially. They've made a lot of money on crude oil in recent years. But you can kind of follow the progress of the Anglo-Dutch axis as a commercial entity from about 1700 to today. And none of it's been good. Actually, what we see on the Union Jack is actually a blending of a Dutch flag and a British flag. So the Union Jack is not actually wholly a British flag. It's a combination that reflects the Anglo-Dutch axis, and you never actually hear anybody talk about this. Just recently, there's been another woman, a historian, and I think her name is something like, well, I won't even attempt it right now, but I'll put it out in an article. There's another woman out there who's talking about this. and who is, filling in more details because,
Can you mute for a second?
1 second, I have to take care of something.
No problem, no problem. Again, folks, while we're waiting, I've just got a couple of questions for Anna, and then I'm going to open the floor straight away for everything. All right, Anna?
Yes, just another one of those little,
Okay. So, sorry, I have, Anna, while I mean, this is all fascinating. You've actually preempted one question which I've been meaning to ask you for a while. And excuse me if you've answered this already in your public notices. I haven't seen it. Where do you get your incredible information from?
well, I guess it's just, the accumulation of 50 years of study.
I mean,
Yeah.
the resources where you get your information. I mean, what are if you had to tell, apart from reading all the incredible information on your notices and all, we have all the other, whether it's your website, etc., and obviously your books, which are really key into it, and your other resources. But I was always curious about where do you go to for for learning all this?
Well, in the early days, it was really difficult because it was not really that available. And you had to do things. You had to make the effort to say, go to the Library of Congress, back when the Library of Congress was open to the public. It no longer is, by the way. You have to get permission from your congressional delegation to get an information request served by the Library of Congress. But we used to do things like go to the Library of Congress and use their research service to say, get the minutes of the Second Continental Congress second session, which, as it turns out, is critical to understanding everything that ever went on afterward with the adoption of the constitutions and what the constitutions were, and where these relationships began with the King of Spain granting the land grant to us and to our fledgling government, as opposed to Britain. Britain had wanted to have the land grant here on this continent, and they had commercial contracts here. They had the Hudson Bay Company here, which at one point had the de facto ownership of most of the continent, including Canada. So it was a big fight between the sea and the land, and the land jurisdiction fell to us, to the United States of America, and that happened during the War of Independence. Most people don't realize that, but anyway, the whole thing, Tony, is very complex. There are so many sources now, and you can get so much on the internet. Some of the really good sources like the Library of Congress may be for all intents and purposes, closed to the public. But there are lots and lots of other good services. There are state archives that remain open for people to investigate. One of the really great pieces of research that went on about the IRS, for example, was Bill Benson's The Law That Never Was. And this was his plotting from one state archive to another and getting certified affirmation that no, it hadn't passed. The 16th Amendment was never ratified by the states of the Union. Therefore, it's not law in the states of the Union and never has been. A lot of this stuff is still available in state level archives and libraries. And you can, the hardest part, Tony, is formulating the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that you start out and you bite down on one part of the web and it just leads you.
That's why it's called a web.
The web or the rabbit hole. But you definitely, you start out with one question and it just leads you to another question. And that leads you to yet another question. And that leads,
Never ending.
right. And over time, you develop a storehouse of knowledge about a vast range of questions that you've had over the years. My personal pursuit began with delving into the IRS. What is it? How does it work? Who is responsible for what? And so it led from there to all sorts of other things.
Oh, I know it, 'cause it's not, but it is. I'm fascinated. I meant to ask you that question. Just while we're on the subject, as I mentioned, have you heard back from the World Court yet?
No,
The World Bank, sorry, the World Banks, isn't it? Yeah.
well, the World Bank is under notice, and what you do is you give them 3 notices. You give them the first, you give them the second, you give them the final, and they have an opportunity to cure their operations. If they don't cure their operations, then you are free to form your own solution to the problem in a declaratory judgment against them. Then the big question is, where do you get enforcement for such a judgment based on their lack of response or acquiescence, as it's known? Well, then you have to go to international commercial courts and take up the issue in the commercial courts. And this applies both for civil issues and for criminal issues, because all crimes are commercial in nature in their system. So you have both commercial crimes and you have regular civil issues that go on. And this is reflected in the structure of the ICJ-ICC. You've got the International Court of Justice that handles the civil issues. And then you have the ICC, the International Criminal Court, which handles the criminal side of things. But it's the same structure throughout. From the ground up, you've still got all of these different courts that function as international commercial courts and international crime courts. And it's all part of one large edifice. Okay, all the courts that you see around you, virtually all the courts that you see around you, are part of this system. Now, to me, someone says international commercial, and I go, that's an oxymoron, because the international monetary system is all based on asset-backed currencies. And the commercial system is all based on what's known as commercial paper, promissory notes, bonds.
IOUs.
Right, right. All these different things that are used in commerce. Certificates are used in commerce. Debentures, stocks, bonds, all that stuff is commercial paper. And it may or may not have value, but it is its own kind of separate category of trading materials, right? So when you say international commerce, it's an oxymoron, because all international transactions are supposed to be in asset-backed currencies. And that's why you have international trade banks. But they've tried to create a sort of subspecies, an oxymoronic species of international commerce. And in that regard, it's the international trading of securitized interests, stocks, bonds, debentures, promissory notes, various kinds of securitizations that all these banks are actually trading. And we we have created an actual bank. In fact, we've created an actual bilateral banking system where we have international trade banks paired with commercial banks. And so this bilateral system can trade either in commerce or it can trade in international trade, and can use commercial paper, prepaid credit specifically, or it can use asset-backed currency. The difference here is that when you're using prepaid credit, it is an asset-backed and legitimate form of trade. It's a perfectly good currency because it's already been essentially paid for by people trading actual goods and services for the notes. So when you have a prepaid credit, I think everybody knows how that works. We see it at Christmas time when everybody gets these annoying Visa credit cards in the mail that are gift cards, right? So your son sends you a $50 gift card in the mail for Christmas. He's paid $50 to the cashier. The cashier has loaded $50 onto the card, and then you can go spend it at whatever store you like because it's prepaid, right? So it is a gift to you, and that you can get back goods and services out of that prepaid amount. And he's already paid for that with his own labor or with the sale of commodities belonging to him. So there is an element of the asset backed to every prepaid credit certificate that can be issued. And this is one of the things that makes our system so completely different from the existing system, is that the existing system deals in debt, whereas ours deals in prepaid credit.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So while we're on the subject of the credit side, so we had a discussion by text, you'll recall, and I was trying to get a better macro understanding of the strategy, the overall strategy that you and your team and all around are working from to be able to end the criminality, so to speak. So, in a nutshell, correct me if I'm wrong here because I just took some notes from it. So, so I was asking, well, what's happening? How are you be able to get to the point where you can do what you have to do, and the people can get access to the relief, etc. So, in a nutshell, you said you're removing their trusteeship and you're stopping them getting access to using our assets for credit. So, in that respect, thinking about where things are at the moment. How far down the line do you feel you are, or we are?
I think we're approaching the finish. I
Okay.
think we're at the end of it.
Hey, God.
It's been a very, very long, hard slog with a lot of obstruction and a lot of double dealing, a lot of bad faith. But at the end of the day, I think we have our way figured out so that we can do what we need to do and finish the job that we set out to accomplish about 20 years ago, almost
Fantastic.
20 years ago, which was a specific thing. When the Big Short hit Wall Street and we saw the effect of the commodity rigging and the advent of bundled mortgage security interest, we realized, my God, these people are not banks. They're securities brokerages operating under the name of banks that vanished long ago. And, pardon me, that realization was key. And the way that we came to that, just to give you an idea of, you ask, how do we know? Well, it's often by just individuals' personal experiences, shining a light on it and offering insight into it. I went to Wells Fargo Bank for a friend who was having trouble with the Wells Fargo Bank. And everybody sees Wells Fargo Bank, and they see this emblem of the stagecoach. And, everybody has an association in this country, anyway, with Wells Fargo being one of the original freight companies that used to bring mail order material from the East and deliver it on the West Coast of the United States. When I was a child, there was even a cute little song about it. It was, the Wells Fargo wagon is a coming down the street. Oh, please let it be for me. It was just a wonderful little thing that the kids would sing, um, and it became a bank of all things. Well, it became a bank because it was in the business of transferring goods and services from one end of the continent to the other. And, being able to transfer money and material interests is a part of transfer, right? Banking is essentially a transfer industry. And so it actually makes more sense than you would think that a transfer company, one that started out as basically a delivery or courier service, transportation of goods service, would then get into banking. So the Wells Fargo Bank became a very large bank on the West Coast of the United States, and it operated for many years from, the end of the Civil War, basically, to the 1920s, and then something happened. And what was it that happened? Well, all these banks went bankrupt. And when they went bankrupt, they didn't cease business. They became securities brokerages instead, without telling anybody. And so we've got a thing called the Wells Fargo Bank, which is just a trademark. And they've been using this trademark, the Wells Fargo Bank trademark, which they still owned, obviously, as a trademark, but their actual function is as a securities brokerage. So they've been dealing in securities and securitized interests in land and other material goods, but giving everybody the impression that they're a bank. And strictly speaking, they're not a bank. Strictly speaking, they're a securities brokerage, and so are all these other major banks. They're all operating out of school, and they're all operating under conditions of deceit because they're not really banks, they're securities brokerages. So once we figured that out, then it was a race to unravel the blood money. And the blood money is what happens when they securitize labor through labor bonds. Perhaps you've heard of child labor bonds that were created by the Miller Act in this country. Very, very sleazy things that went on here. But then they have performance bonds. They don't call them labor bonds. They're not that upfront in certain respects. The Miller Act child labor bonds are about as bad and egregious as an example of it as you can find. But then they go into performance bonds, and they use performance bonds to bond adults. And people get all excited. They think, oh, well, there's this bond issued in my name. And I always step back and I look at them as if they're crazy, because why would you let a government issue a bond in your name? That's a performance bond. It's not a savings bond. It's they're bonding you to perform and for you to give them a portion of your labor and for you to give them a portion of your estate and for them to be able to administer it in the public interest without even saying which public they're talking about. So, it's a humongous scam, and it's a well, and it results in peonage and enslavement. It just depends upon what kind of bond it is and who issued it. If it was a municipal bond, it results in enslavement. If it's a British territorial bond, it results in peonage. And in either case, you get stuck fulfilling obligations of the government instead of the government fulfilling its obligations to you.
Speaking of securitization, Anna, a question here that's been put in. I think was this from you, Mookie? In relation, is there any relief at the moment for those who's in the international kind of arena, for those whose homes are basically being taken off them? Is there any immediate relief that you think?
Well, yes, the indemnity bond is helping a lot of people. But as I explained last week, to the best of my knowledge, the indemnity bond is limited to Americans because it was set up by Americans. It was tagged against American issues. It was the money involved was all within the American construct. So there isn't an indemnity bond, for example, for Australia, or an indemnity bond for Cornwall. There could be. You could basically do the same thing as we did, but and it would be the same basic process. It would be a private indemnity bond held by a public officer. So what it would be, you'd have to find someone in your country to act as I have acted, and they would have to set up a private indemnity bond and hold that as a public officer of a foreign government. In this case, your national government is foreign with respect to these corporations that have come in to provide quote unquote essential government services. And we were just, it's funny we're talking about this because we just talked about it in another meeting today. And that is that when you do business with a non-Hague country, and there are quite a few countries still left in the world that are not members of the Hague Convention.
Mm-hmm.
When you do business outside of the Hague Convention, they have to basically give you a guarantee that they will stand good for your business transactions in that non-Hague member country. And so what they do is they take a birth certificate and they apostille it in a very specific way, and they issue a bond. And the bond number is printed on the front page of the apostilled birth certificate. And what they're doing is they're bonding their shipper or their franchise operating in a different country. Okay, so if you get such a bond, this is a different kind of bond. This is a bond that the corporation is issuing as a guarantee to the other country. And so this is a full faith and credit bond is what it's called. And this is what the Congress has been using to basically steal your credit and latch onto your assets. They've been pledging your assets as guarantee for credit that they then receive and spend. And it's really not that much different than a credit card hacker. You know, they steal your identity, they access your credit, they spend it however they wish, and then you get the bill. And so this is what they're doing. But the indemnity bonding process kind of puts the shoe back on the other foot, because suddenly they are forced to pay up on the guarantees they made for their franchises. They don't like that very much, but nonetheless, it's a fair thing to do to them in view of what they've done to you. So basically, I have the apostilled full faith and credit bond that was issued to the British territorial estate known as Anna Maria Reisinger. And then I just reflagged that boat and reconveyed it with
Oh, yeah.
bonding intact, because the bonding is not affected by the change in nationality.
Well, that's so that's the first action. I think most people thought that could be done, used in internationally, but that's important to know. So we just need to really duplicate what you've done.
Right. And you can use the national debt that they publish as the basis of your indemnity bond, because that's what we did. You know, they were admitting that they owed us that much. Fine. We'll accept that debt, and we'll you know, use it as leverage to do what we need to do in terms of securing our exemptions, because we were always supposed to be exempt, and they never did provide an exemption fund. So we basically glommed onto their published national debt as our credit.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. I'm conscious that I said we wanted to stick to an hour and a half because it gives you that couple of hours in before your next podcast. So I'm going to go straight into the part which is important for the international coordinator. So to give each of them who wants to talk to give a quick update on where they're at since we last spoke last week, or any specific questions. So who's first? In fairness, I think Dorothea. Where are you, Dorothea?
Hi, everybody. I'm from South Africa. I'm part of the Africa States Assembly team, helping the Africans that called their assembly into session in May. I have a question, but this is just something I need to get clear so I can share it with some of the Africans that's a bit worried about the trusts. We had a situation with somebody that had a trust. But now this person actually said if you go and register a trust, it's back into the system. So how do you go about having your assets like a home or a vehicle and things, taking it out of the system, making it part of your own and securing it, but not in a trust that you have to register? Can that maybe, I'm sorry, I just want to know, maybe you have explained this before, but that's just something that came up lately with the Africans.
If you want
I
to
hear.
retain, if you want to retain a ownership interest in something, you need to record it. Okay? So you would record the elements of the trust, not register it. And you can record it using our international recording system, or you can set up your own land recording office, and you can use that as the vehicle to record your common law trust. So a common law trust that's recorded has a completely different character than a territorial, a statutory trust that's registered. They're existing in two different jurisdictions and under two different laws, very different laws. So my suggestion to you is that if you have need of a trust structure as say for a means of being able to hand on, you know, a part of South Africa as a well, public trust to the progeny who will live there in years to come, you would use a common law trust and you would record it. You would not register it.
Is that okay, Dorothea?
Yes, I know it needed to be recorded, but like you need to set up your own common law trust and then record it. Is that what we need to do? Thank you.
Right.
You
I
answered me well.
believe so. Yeah.
Thank
that
you so
sounds
much.
good to me.
Okay, I'm not sure, sorry, between Raleigh and Mookie, I'm not sure who was up first, excuse me, so one of you can go first.
Go for it, Riley.
Thank you, Mookie, appreciate it. Hi, Anna. Nice to speak to you again. Okay, I brought a situation up on our last night's meeting regarding corporation known as Go New Earth. This company is registered under ICIPIC, under the Department of Trade and Industry. The director is Adrian Fonse. Now, I need to know if you are in communication with him. Are you assisting him with regards to any forms of humanitarian trusts? Because he put out a public notice. And then I spoke to Wimpy from the TASA, and Adrian then followed up with another letter. But what concerns me is that he's claiming to have been given recognition internationally, which includes the Supreme Courts of the USA, UCC1 filings, International Criminal Court, International Criminal Court of Justice, liaison with the International Interpol, the World Bank, IMF, and Global Humanitarian Trust. He's basically warned the so-called rogue assemblies to cease and desist. However, this man is operating under commercial jurisdiction, and he's claiming to be focusing and functioning under commercial. What I can do, I can send the email, this correspondent to you, or I can put it on your Telegram, or I can send it via Telegram to you. This is very concerning. So I need to know, are you in talks with Adrian Fonse? Because he calls himself Honorable Judge Fonse.
He is a judge with an international commercial court. I would have to look at the correspondence to be able to properly interpret it. But yeah, I know he's an international commercial court judge, originally from South Africa, I believe.
He's still in South Africa.
Okay, so that makes sense. Why don't you go ahead and just email it to me as a attachment, and let me read it, and I'll be able to interpret it better.
Okay, so I'll put it in. I'll put in the subject Adrian Fonse.
Okay, or what is the name of the company that?
It's called Go New Earth Pty Limited. Go New Earth Pty Limited.
Pty Limited.
It's registered under the RSA Corporation.
The what corporation?
The RSA Corporation, the Republic of South Africa Corporation. Okay, we have the thing called CIPIC. It is the Commission of Intellectual Property Commission, and it is a direct franchise or a subsidiary of the Department of Trade and Industry in South Africa under the RSA. We call it the RSA.
Okay, could you just, when you send the email, could you just very briefly line out what you just said in terms of, what the name of each agency is and what it does?
Okay, I will do so.
Of course, I'm not familiar with South Africa, but
we'll teach you.
I'm familiar with various things that are going on, and I can probably put it into some legitimate interpretation for you.
Okay, because this guy is basically threatening us. This is what he's saying, that he will report us to Interpol, charge us internationally under a court system. Thank you for telling me that he operates under commercial, because I don't think he comprehends that there's a distinction between the commercial structure versus the land soil jurisdiction structure. I know Wimpy and them were in conversations with him, and by the way, he is referencing the Alpha and Omega Trust, which he say he is involved with. Are you aware of that?
Well,
And the White Spirit Boy as well.
technically, my understanding is that he is the judge that was assigned to sort out the ownership issues related to the white spiritual boy. There are several, as you know, there are several very large kind of what would you call them? They're
Legacy Trust.
well, no, in that case, these are ASBLP trusts and accounts. What they are is when they took the money out of, say, the Avila Trust, and they used it to trade, and they made profit on it. A certain amount of the profit was owed back to the Avila Trust, and all of that money was collected in these ASBLP accounts. So they're basically the profit coming back from having invested somebody else's money for 50 years. And it's the portion owned to the actual owner of the money or asset that was invested. So it's sort of like a special account or special bin for to collect all the money that's coming back in from investing somebody else's money for 50 years. It's truly a bank trust. And my understanding is that Adrian Fonzi is the guy that was responsible for determining who the actual owners of the ASBLP accounts are, and to take them to take the World Bank to task for certain acts of misadministration of those funds. But what he would be doing with Go New Earth, I would have to spend some research time just actually looking up the company and who the directors are and what its stated purpose is, and why would he be, why would he be communicating with you per se? Is he perhaps mistaking you for somebody else or some other organization? It's hard to say just, walking in
Okay.
blind.
Okay, so what he's done is he's spoken to the Southern Assembly States group, which is Wimpy. Wimpy is on here right now. But the problem and this is the conflict I had, and this is why we wanted to get your opinion, is that he's also assisting regarding to the issue of the GFG accounts and also the land recording processes. Now, an incorporated company cannot deal with us. We're in a separate assembly under land and soil jurisdiction, and I think either there's miscommunication or the people are not comprehending that. Yes, we might talk to some of these incorporated individuals, but you don't threaten me and you don't threaten our assemblies, irrespective of how much assemblies actually are there. The fact is that he threatened us. That's my problem. Now, if he has got authority to do the Alpha and the Omega and the White Spiritual Boy trusts now, then my question would be, how do we confirm that these trusts are actually legitimate? Because I watched a video clip of him. He says that he obtained a document from the World Bank. Now, my comprehension is it appears that the World Bank is actually controlling these forms of trust. I yield.
That's entirely possible. You see, these historical or legacy trusts have been commandeered under the false presumption of a public interest in them. And these corporations that are masquerading as governments, of course, are hot to get any kind of interest in your private property or anybody's private property that they can get, especially if they can get it for free just by making a claim. So again, it's part and parcel of trying to clean up this mess. You don't always know where all these things are coming from. I don't know why he would identify your assembly as being fake or,
Rogue. The word is rogue.
rogue. I'm not sure why he would identify your assembly as being rogue and the South Assembly not being rogue, because let's face it, at this point, everything that we're doing is rather radical in terms of the current system. And, it's a change in jurisdiction that has a profound effect because it also changes the law that we're living under and practicing. So,
Thank you. Thank you. I yield on that.
yeah, there's an idea that is prevalent. I don't know why. There's only one assembly in each principality. Like there's one assembly in each state here in the United States. And there may be many different groups that organize, and they may have meetings, they may investigate topics, they may bring forward information and all of that. But at the end of the day, there's only one state assembly. And so you could have a South African assembly, and you could have a North South African assembly, and you could have an East one and a West one and a Southwest, and God only knows how many permutations you could have. But at the end of the day, there's only one in each principality, in each, locale. And they all together make up the assembly for that particular country. So it may just be a misunderstanding.
Look, Anna, let's be frank. We do have conflict at the moment in South Africa. Everybody's making a claim. They are the ones that are going to be the national assembly. There has been various, let me put it this way, a difference of opinions on what is required in order to lawfully establish a legitimate assembly. And unfortunately, I've been with two groups and I had disagreements because and everybody likes to say we use Anna's material. Now, the three things that most of these guys are not doing, and which makes me very vigilant and outspoken. History, law, and religion is not being investigated in South Africa. I am the only one under the SASSA doing that research, because you made it very clear. If you don't know your history, your law, or religion, how do you know you can claim it? If it is correct that, like you said before, okay, we've never been an unincorporated country. So on what basis are you making a claim that you have now called your state assembly in session, and what evidence have you presented to the public to saying we have a lawful right to make a claim for an assembly? Because the fact, as I told you there last week, the issue I have is the 928 docs in conjunction with the fact that we are also Commonwealth citizens, which really, really is a problematic issue for me. Because if I remember on one of your articles, we didn't fill in the Citizenship Act form to renounce or remove ourselves from the RSA via their paperwork under the Citizenship Act. Okay? Now the question comes down, which form must I use for the Commonwealth citizen? Do I use then the British nationality's citizenship documentation to say I'm also removing myself as a citizen of your Commonwealth? So there is a lot of conflict and issues that is really making it difficult to get everybody together. And this is what Wimpy and I were discussing the other day. The issue here for me personally now at the moment is that we don't want to there's a hot mic. Tony, there's a hot mic.
Yeah, whoever's 1 second. Sorry, can you mic your phone, please? Or you mute your phone, please, or your Your mic, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that, Anna. The biggest thing is that everybody wants to be in the front, be the first, but end of the day is, yes, the concern, and I'm going to put it on the international public domain. You see that what everybody's not getting, we're flying under the Americans' banner. If we do not do this thing right, okay, it's not just the Africans that are going to get the hiding. It's everybody that is affiliated or associated to the concept of assemblies internationally. And I will be vocal on it, and I will be determined not to allow people to make claims when we don't have our evidence in place. As you all know, we are in a volatile situation right now in South Africa, especially with the concept of First Nation status claiming, and the fact that Adrian is actually doing deals or signing contracts with the First Nations to deal with their issues regarding the money. And this thing of the Omega, Alpha, and potentially the white spiritual boy is actually creating serious problems because everybody's joining these groups for the money. Everybody's joining the groups or creating new groups to join the GFG account or the GFG group to get money. And what everybody's forgetting and not realizing, it's not about the money. It's about claiming our status as living men and women and having the right to be lawfully, have the lawful authority to live the life that we believe is right and to create a new governance structure that gets rid of this corporation structure. I yield.
Here, here.
Yeah, well, it's a matter of inheritance, not politics. And that's something that a lot of people miss. And there are actually two forms of state assembly. There's the International State Assembly, okay, and then there is the Assembly of the Soil. So you've got two layers. It's like a layer cake. You've got two assemblies in every minor state within the country. You have two layers.
Sorry, will you mic your phone again or mute your, keep saying the wrong thing. Can you mute your mic, whoever that is?
It's Tiva Kalisa.
Who is it?
Tiny, just mute him.
Who is it?
Fakalisa.
I'm trying to find 1 second.
Okay, Tiva Kalisa. Vakalisa.
Okay,
I
they're
yield.
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, Anna.
Right.
This is a bit confusing, you know. People who aren't used to thinking of it in terms of land and soil, they see it together because it is in perennial union, but they don't realize that in terms of government organization, there are two different jurisdictions, and that results in two assemblies. And each person is a member of two assemblies from the get-go. Now, here in this country, things are kind of more convenient in that we have a large state, right? And then within that state, we have maybe 200 counties that are much smaller defined areas within the state. And so we have the advantage in that our state is thought of as a whole, right? And then the counties account for the local soil jurisdiction government. Not everywhere is like that. Now, when we walk through the door into one of our assemblies and we reclaim our birthright, we are re-inhabiting and populating our State of the Union. But then at the very same moment that we're doing that, we're also populating an individual county within that State of the Union. Okay, so I'm not only recognized as a Wisconsinite, I'm recognized as part of the population of Jackson County, right? So the two things go together, but you're wearing different hats, you know. When it comes to local determination, you're wearing your county hat or your soil jurisdiction hat. When it comes to international issues, then you're wearing your state hat. or your province hat, as it may be.
If I could add on to that, we had a discussion as a committee for Tasasa. And maybe I want to run this idea because actually, my personal opinion, because this has been a corporation running this geographical area, and maybe you can guide me in the process and procedure. What we have decided is that we take the whole country with all the provinces. We make it one country with 44 counties. Instead of fighting the provinces. But as you rightly said, between the Dutch and the British, each one had his claim, like the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek, the South African Republic, and the Orange Free State. That little battle still needs to be resolved. But my personal opinion, in order to stop any possible problems, and I like your county system because what you're saying is so perfect that it breaks the ability for people to manipulate and create new systems where they can steal from us again. And I actually spoke to somebody from the First Nation. I used Texas as the example to show them when I mean by the county. Your county will differ in size based on population, okay? But at the moment, we have 43 we call it municipal districts. We have local municipality, and then we have districts. So in district, we have, say, 7 municipalities, okay? So we're going to take the district boundaries system and make that a county. So each county or each community has control over their own financial well-being and financial sustainability. On that, I yield.
Well, if the problem is coming from First Nations claims, what we've done in this country is we established dual nationality, so that, for example, if a member of the Winnebago tribe is born in Wisconsin, right? They are automatically a member of the Ho-Chunka Nation, right? But they're also a Wisconsinite. They have a dual national status. So that works out really well here because that way everybody has their cultural identity. They have their nation, right? But they also have international state standing, and it just goes with the package, and everybody seems to get along pretty well with that. So that's how we resolve the issue of the original native people here having their nation and we having our nation and everybody getting along with each other. It really doesn't, I grew up, I just use that example because I grew up in Wisconsin with Winnebago people. I had classmates in school and everybody who was Winnebago. I had good friends that were Winnebagos. And so they had their own police, and they had their own elders council, and they have their own language, they have their own culture, they, have their own religious beliefs, everything. They have a nation. And so many nations can occupy the same geographical area, the same time and space, and be totally cooperative. And that's really the way it should be. There's no reason to destroy other nations simply because they're different, or I'm better than you are because they're different. That's not the spirit of the thing. What you want to get to is where everybody is living peaceably together and contributing to the betterment of the environment and the peacefulness of the communities and security and water quality and everything else. So that's what we've managed to do, so that there's no barrier to claiming your right as a Winnebago, and there's no no obstruction to you as Winnebago also claiming to be a Wisconsinite. There's advantages and things to both. So we have a dual national standard here. And I would suggest that that's what needs to happen pretty much throughout the planet, because let's face it, in most places, the quote unquote, and I don't like using this word indigenous, because all people are indigenous to wherever they were formed. I mean, look at me. Where did my mother find the atoms and molecules to make me? It was Wisconsin, all right? And so I'm a Wisconsinite, born and bred, literally, figuratively created from the land and soil and water of Wisconsin. You can't get more indigenous than that. And that's true of everyone who was born and raised in that area, and who, was literally constructed, physically constructed in Wisconsin. So I don't like the word indigenous, because it seems to imply some sort of special separating status that doesn't really exist. I prefer to think of it as original nations of people that had their own culture and language and life, and they're a nation, but they're just people like everybody else. And it doesn't matter what color skin you have or all those other differences. What you have to look at is our commonality. Someone once said that we're all red underneath the skin. We have so much more in common than we have separating us. But for some weird reason, people tend to focus on the differences. And I think that has to do with early childhood training, where we're given, a bunch of different colored blocks. And we're asked to separate them into different colors. We're given a bunch of different shapes, and we're supposed to group the shapes according to their shape. And we're never told the opposite. We're never told to look at what's in common. Have you ever noticed that? They never ask you to look at these things and go, oh, well, let's see, they're all made of plastic. They're all cube shapes. The thinking is skewed. And I'd like to get away from that. I'd like all of us to think more inclusively and be more accepting of the diversity of nature. Because if you look around, how many different kinds of trees are there? How many different kinds of insects are there? How many different kinds of fish are there? I mean, it's obvious that nature is wildly into diversity and into making many different forms of even the same thing, So why wouldn't we have lots of different forms of mankind? It's obvious that we do. And who's to say that a rose smells sweeter than a violet? What are we going to do? Declare all violets? You can't have any violets because they're different than roses? How would you deprive yourself of the beauty of all of it? It's maddening that we have this little glitch in our brains that thinks in terms of homogeneity. Homogeneity does not exist in nature. There isn't just one kind of anything, unless maybe you're talking about platypuses. But, you look around, and once you open your eyes, you just see the wild, wonderful diversity that all works together to make a world that we're the inheritors of. So, I'm not going to throw away my violets just because I like roses. I'm not going to throw away my roses just because I like violets. I'm going to take it all. I'm going to enjoy it all. I'm going to enjoy it all. One of the great things about America is that we are the least homogeneous society on earth. You can walk down the street here and you can find 15 different kinds of world cuisine on the same street. You know, you got Mexican, you got Italian, you got Filipino, you got Thai, you got Chinese, you got Indian food, you got, you know, when we benefit from having all of that, you know, it's kind of strange for me when I go to a foreign country and, you know, all you've got is sand buckles for 2 miles, you know. I really, I think that diversity is a healthy thing. I think it's a good thing. It's something that we should all value and preserve to the extent that we can. You know, in this country, we've undergone a pretty extensive effort over the past 50 years to save Native cultures and to invest in you know, programs to teach Native languages, for example. To not, you know, to record them while they're still native speakers of those languages and to set up schools where children learn their native language. And in part, this is, you know, the pendulum swings. First, we had these residential schools that the Brits came in here and set up these residential schools where they basically tried to drum every element of native culture out of the children, you know. They would literally kidnap the kids from the reservations, which were, let's be honest, open air internment camps. Okay. They would kidnap the kids and they would put them in these quote unquote residential schools. And at these residential schools, the kids had to wear British style clothing. They had to speak only English. They had to learn English table manners. They had to go through, you know, history of these foreign countries that they never would, you know, not naturally have any knowledge of. And basically they were subjected to a cultural genocide. And, you know, by the time they got shoved through that mill and then tried to go back to the reservation, they were standing between two worlds and didn't really understand either. You see, they weren't white, they weren't native, they were just kind of in this gray zone. They never learned their native language because all the time they were growing up, they were in residential school. So here they are speaking English. Forced homogeneity is an evil. You know, it's one thing if you want to learn English because other people are speaking English, right? But to be forced, that's a whole different thing.
Thank you for that, Anna, because I think it's actually needed because we in South Africa need to hear from your side. Look, we had the similar concept of these reservations. We call it homelands. And yes, there has been this various ideological indoctrination, and we need to find common ground. And I'm thankful for that. And on that, I yield, and then I'll give Mookie the next chance.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that. I was about to jump in there. Go ahead, Mookie.
Yeah, good day, everyone, and thank you very much once again, Anna, for sharing your precious time with us all. It's very much appreciated, most sincerely. I just wanted to touch on the topic of GFG. About a little over 12 months ago, we were able to exchange amongst ourselves. Reconveyed state nationals could exchange AFD amongst ourselves and trade amongst ourselves. We had a toolbar that allowed us to do so, which was a great relief. It really helps us. We're undertaking an international assembly coordinators website. We've had some really productive meetings. It's going to be massive, and we'd love to be able to trade AFD with website developers. That would take immense pressure off us and the international community to get this website up and running and all its various things that we can use to network with each other. So is there any possibility in the near future that this could be reinstated and we could start trading amongst ourselves, at least with AFD?
I believe so. I don't see any reason why not. Hunter has reported that he has completed all those new modules And I haven't had a chance to sit down and play with it, but it looks really impressive and wonderful and very user friendly. For example, you can go online and you can order your own credential card. You can order your own health card so that, you know, the health services, you can pay your healthcare bills with this card. It's really skookum, and they've really worked very hard to make it user friendly. And he told me last week that it's ready. So I anticipate that very soon they're going to quote unquote unleash the beast. You know, it's like
Very exciting.
yes, and I very, very impressed with what the IT team was able to accomplish in a fairly short time between the 28th of May and today. You know, basically 2 months. They were able to finish all these modules and get them ready for flight and test them and everything. So very soon you should be able to trade among yourselves, and you should have access to these card services. And the card services should be connected to the QFS, not QFS, to the QFC, the you know, the
Gift. Yeah.
yeah, the scanned commercial code that is
QRC, yeah.
in the QRC. Yes, yes. So it should be connected to the QRC, and everybody who has a QRC reader will be able to get paid. And those who don't have a QRC reader won't be able to get paid, which will really, really put the iron to the fire for them to get a QRC reader and learn the new technology.
Okay, thank you very much, QC. Should we just patiently wait for this, or would you mind me putting out a group email, CCing everyone and just letting reminding of this question in the meeting, or would that be too forward?
I think that they're going as fast as they can, but you know, it wouldn't make any difference because they're, you know, they really want to get it out there. And it's just a couple of things left that I know of that are being resolved this week. So by the time you could complain, they'd be, you know. So I expect all of this stuff to get resolved within the next week and a half.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And it certainly wouldn't be a complaint. We're very, very grateful for everyone's efforts. So, yeah, at that, we're at an hour and a half, so I'm going to yield. Thank you so much for your time.
Take care, dear.
Yeah, just before, I know there's one or two, but we'll have to, because I really wanted to stick with the hour and a half for you, Anna, for your sake, mainly. But just on that, will that announcement be made by GFG and you, or by you, by GFG? What will happen?
I think it will be even bigger because it's going to affect the entire financial world. So I'm not exactly sure what the announcement will be, if I'll start out with an article and then GFG will follow up with its, you know, rollout program, or you know, it may come from even much larger organizations that you know, begin dealing with the public and the restructuring of the financial system, because this is it's a profound restructuring that will
Wow.
affect billions of people, not just millions, but billions of people will be affected by this. Because as I explained to you, I started out to be the fiduciary for the United States of America and found out that the United States of America had been used as a pirate base. And so that we wound up having to not only take into consideration the Americans, we had to take into consideration everybody else. So
Mhm.
that's how we wound up here today. It's because so many countries had been similarly impacted, and all of the, well, not all, but majority of the paper trail comes back to this country because this is where they had their home base. So I don't know whatever distinction it is to be the host of the worst hornet's nest that ever existed, but here we are. And so hopefully here very shortly, in terms of the time it's taken to get here, we'll be crossing that finish line, and you'll start seeing the dashboard elements that you want being made available. And I can even ask Hunter specifically. I'm sorry,
You're tired.
I am. I've had 2 weeks in hell, but I can ask Hunter specifically about turning on the trading functions, and he may even be able to do that without any problem.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's immensely appreciated. That will free us up a lot, and we can network and keep augmenting ferociously if we can trade amongst ourselves.
Okay.
Well done. Fair play to you. We have to wrap up now, but I'm conscious, Wimpy, you have had your hand up for ages. So if it's a quick question, jump in there before we wrap up.
Thank you, Tony. Anna, thank you so much for the opportunity. You're already yawning, so I don't want to waste your time. If we can carry this over to next week, it would be fine with us. And I'm apologizing for the video, but we have very poor connection. But I think I need to be, in all fairness, need to set the record straight in terms of Adrian Fonse and how it came about and how we meet, and what he actually did request from us was working together with us, and we needed to sort out the 528 and 928 documents, and he has been fighting the de facto since 1982. And I just need to set the record straight in terms of that. And I've explained it to the INAC team last night. So I think we can leave it for next week. I just want to leave it at that point so that we just have the opportunity to talk about it. And I did send you an email, and I also send you a mobile text message, but knowing that you get thousands of messages, I'm sure that these messages got lost. So I yield to that to next week. Thank you so much for everybody's time.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
Wimpy.
Well, I'll be looking into it.
Listen,
See
thank you,
what's
Anna.
going on.
I wish it was nighttime and you could go straight to bed, but not to be. Anyway, thank you for your time, Anna, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. We
Thank
love
you.
you.
Thank you, Anna.
God bless. Thank you.
Thanks,
God bless you.
Tony, for the arrangement of the meeting again.
No problem. Take care, folks. I'll send the recording to INAC coordinators, and anyone else who's put their email in there. Okay.
Cheers, Tony. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Tony, cheers,
Thank
mate.
you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.